Welcome back to the channel Coin Star everyone, and thank you for tuning in today, because if you love hidden treasure stories, unbelievable coin discoveries, and the idea that a tiny piece of metal in your pocket could secretly be worth a life-changing fortune, then you are absolutely in the right place. And in today's video we're diving deep into the mysterious, controversial, and highly talked about 1978 United States of America 1 dime Liberty coin, a coin that most people have spent without a second thought. Yet some collectors believe certain rare examples could be connected to values whispered as high as $833 million, a number that sounds impossible at first, but when you start peeling back the layers of minting history, rare production anomalies, extreme errors, experimental metal possibilities, and the psychology of elite collectors, you begin to understand why this humble dime has become such a hot topic in the world of numismatics and viral coin hunting videos. So let's begin this journey by stepping back to the year 1978, a time when the United States Mint was producing millions upon millions of Roosevelt dimes, each bearing the familiar Liberty-inspired portrait of President Franklin D. Roosevelt on the obverse, along with the words "Liberty and in God we trust," and on the reverse the torch flanked by olive and oak branches symbolizing peace, strength, and independence, with the denomination clearly marked as 1 dime, and at face value this coin was worth exactly 10 cents, used for vending machines, bus fares, candy, and everyday purchases. Yet hidden within this massive production run were mistakes, anomalies, and minting irregularities that under the right conditions can transform an ordinary object into an extraordinary artifact, because the 1978 dime was struck at multiple mints including Philadelphia, which traditionally carried no mint mark, Denver with the D mint mark, and San Francisco primarily for proof issues, and each of these facilities used high-speed presses, dies that wore down over time, planchets prepared in bulk, and quality control systems that were good but not perfect. And it is precisely within these imperfections that collectors find magic, because errors are where rarity is born, and rarity is the foundation of value, especially when combined with strong demand, compelling stories, and the human desire to own something almost no one else can. And when we talk about the staggering figure of $833 million associated in viral conversations with the 1978 dime, it is not about an average circulated example but about hypothetical or rumored ultra-unique specimens that combine multiple extreme factors, such as being struck on the wrong metal, possibly a transitional or experimental planchet, having dramatic and undeniable mint errors like double strikes, off-metal compositions, missing or distorted mint marks, major die clashes, or even wrong denomination strikes, all while remaining in near-perfect or mint state condition, because condition is king in the coin world, and a flawless error is exponentially more valuable than a damaged one. And to understand how such values are even discussed, we must first understand mint errors themselves, because errors are not all created equal. Some are minor, like small die chips or light doubling that add modest premiums, while others are major, visually striking, and statistically almost impossible, such as a dime struck on a planchet intended for a different coin entirely, for example a copper-nickel-clad planchet meant for a quarter, or even a foreign planchet that somehow entered the minting process. And if a 1978 dime were discovered struck on a completely wrong metal, such as pure silver, aluminum, brass, or an experimental alloy never officially released, and if that composition were scientifically verified, documented, and proven unique, the value conversation would immediately move into territory reserved for museum-grade pieces and private elite collections, because at that level the price is not set by guides but by what one billionaire collector is willing to pay another. And history shows us that unique coins have sold for astronomical sums, not because of their denomination but because of their story, their uniqueness, and their status as a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. And another critical factor surrounding the 1978 dime is mint mark errors, because the presence, absence, or distortion of a mint mark can completely redefine a coin's identity. And while Philadelphia dimes normally have no mint mark, a coin showing a faint D, a misplaced mint mark, a doubled mint mark, or a ghost image of a mint mark where none should exist raises immediate red flags for collectors and graders, because mint marks were punched or engraved in different ways depending on the era, and any deviation from standard placement suggests either a die preparation error or a post-mint alteration. And the challenge is separating genuine mint errors from tampering, which is why professional authentication is essential, but when a real mint mark error is confirmed, especially one that cannot be replicated or explained easily, it becomes a cornerstone of extreme valuation discussions, especially when combined with other anomalies like doubled dies, where the design appears doubled due to misalignment during die creation, and on Roosevelt dimes this doubling can sometimes be seen. On the date, the word Liberty, or the torch on the reverse, and a strong double die that is bold, clear, and untouched by circulation can push values dramatically higher, especially if very few examples are known, and now consider the possibility, often discussed in speculative circles, of a 1978 dime struck during a transitional or experimental phase. Because while the composition of dimes had officially shifted from silver to copper-nickel clad earlier, mints occasionally tested materials. And accidents have happened in the past where obsolete planchets or experimental blanks were struck with new dies, and if a 1978 dime were discovered on a silver planchet or another unexpected metal with full documentation, that alone would make it one of the most important error coins in modern U.S. history, and when people talk about values in the hundreds of millions, they are often imagining a perfect storm scenario, a coin that combines off-metal striking, dramatic visual error, mint mark anomaly, flawless condition, and absolute uniqueness, because uniqueness is the multiplier that breaks conventional pricing models, and beyond physical characteristics, the role of storytelling cannot be overstated, because collectors are not just buying metal, they are buying a narrative, a piece of history, a mystery, and the thrill of owning something that rewrites what we thought we knew. And the 1978 dime benefits from being modern enough that people still find them in circulation yet old enough that production records are closed and surprises can still emerge, fueling the hunt mentality that has driven top view coin videos to millions of views across platforms, as people rush to check their change jars, inherited collections, and forgotten drawers, hoping lightning strikes twice. And another layer that adds to the fascination is the grading scale, because a coin graded at the very top, such as MS-68 or MS-69 for business strikes, is exponentially rarer than lower grades, and when an error coin achieves such a grade, it becomes a unicorn, and graders examine strike quality, luster, surface preservation, and eye appeal, and for a 1978 dime to achieve extreme grades while also exhibiting major errors would be almost miraculous, and miracles command prices that defy logic, especially in private sales where discretion and competition drive numbers higher. And while skeptics rightly point out that claims of hundreds of millions must be approached with caution, history reminds us that the most valuable coins ever sold were once considered ordinary, dismissed, or unknown, until the right discovery, the right documentation, and the right buyer came together. And it is also important to understand that markets are driven by emotion as much as data, because when a coin becomes a symbol, a conversation piece, or a trophy, its value is no longer anchored to metal content or face value but to status, and in that sense the 1978 dime represents the ultimate fantasy of modern coin collecting, the idea that even in an age of mass production and automation, the human element of error can still create legends, and this is why experts always advise checking dates, inspecting edges, weighing coins, using magnification to look for doubling, die cracks, or odd textures, and never cleaning a coin, because cleaning destroys originality and can erase hundreds of thousands or millions in potential value. And if you ever believe you have found something unusual, professional evaluation is the only path forward, because authentication separates fantasy from fact, and while not every 1978 dime will be special, the few that are special have the power to change lives, spark debates, and dominate online discussions, and that is why this coin continues to capture imagination, because it sits at the crossroads of everyday life and extraordinary possibility, reminding us that history does not always announce itself loudly, sometimes it whispers from the bottom of a pocket, waiting for the right person to listen. And as we wrap this deep dive, remember that the real value of the 1978 United States of America one-dime Liberty coin is not just in rumored price tags or viral headlines, but in the curiosity it ignites, the knowledge it encourages. Those mind-blowing stories that sounds unbelievable at first but keeps you glued until the very last second. Today we are diving deep into the mysterious and highly talked about 1982 United States of America dime, a tiny 10-cent coin that at first glance looks ordinary, something you might toss into a jar, a pocket, or even lose between couch cushions, but behind that small silver disc lies a story of errors, Minting chaos, rare possibilities, and collector obsession that has pushed some versions of this dime into conversations involving an astonishing $959 million, and yes, you heard that number right, not thousands, not millions in the usual sense, but a figure that represents the extreme upper end of hypothetical and speculative value when multiple rare conditions collide into one single coin. So stay with me as we break down how a simple dime dated 1982 with a mint mark transformed from everyday pocket change into one of the most talked about modern-era rarity legends in the world of numismatics, because the real magic here is not just in the metal but in the mistakes, the missing details, the unexpected varieties, and the historic moment in which this coin was produced. The year 1982 itself is incredibly important in U.S. coin history because it was a time of major transition, confusion, and experimentation at the U.S. Mint. Inflation was high, metal prices were fluctuating, production pressures were intense, and quality control standards were being tested like never before, which created the perfect environment for rare errors to slip through unnoticed. The 1982 dime is officially known as the Roosevelt dime, honoring President Franklin D. Roosevelt, featuring his profile on the obverse with the word liberty and the phrase "In God We Trust," while the reverse displays a torch flanked by olive and oak branches symbolizing liberty, peace, and strength. And under normal circumstances, a 1982 D dime struck in Denver would be worth exactly 10 cents, maybe $1 or $2 in pristine uncirculated condition, but what separates the ordinary from the extraordinary are the mistakes that should never have happened. One of the most famous and valuable categories of this coin involves missing mint mark errors. Even though you are hearing about a 1982 D dime, there exists a legendary counterpart known as the 1982 no mint mark dime, and this is where the story gets truly fascinating because in 1982 the Philadelphia Mint accidentally released dimes without the required P mint mark, something that had not happened for circulation coins since 1980. This oversight resulted in one of the most famous modern U.S. coin errors, and while the no mint mark variety is usually associated with Philadelphia, the Denver Mint was also dealing with die preparation issues, worn hubs, weak strikes, and misaligned punches, meaning some coins show extremely faint D mint marks, repunched mint marks, tilted mint marks, or mint marks that appear partially missing due to grease-filled dies or improper striking pressure, and these subtle variations are where collectors start paying serious money, because in numismatics rarity combined with demand creates value, and when rarity is layered with mystery and controversy, the value discussion can explode into astronomical numbers, especially when hypothetical perfect storm conditions are discussed. Imagine a single 1982 D dime that combines multiple rare errors all at once: a wrong planchet error where the dime is struck on a foreign or experimental metal, a missing or distorted mint mark, a double die obverse showing dramatic doubling on liberty or the date, an off-center strike that still shows full detail, and pristine condition untouched by circulation. Such a coin would be unique, possibly one of a kind, and uniqueness is where price ceilings disappear. Because when two billionaire collectors want the same coin, the price becomes whatever one is willing to pay. And this is how discussions around values like $959 million even enter the conversation, not as a catalog price, not as a guarantee, but as an illustration of what happens when rarity, mythology, condition, and demand collide in the uppermost extremes of the collecting world. Another critical factor with the 1982 D dime is composition. Standard Roosevelt dimes are composed of a copper core sandwiched between two layers of copper nickel, but during transitional periods, there have been documented cases where coins were struck on wrong planchets, including those intended for foreign coins or experimental alloys. A 1982 dime struck on a silver planchet, for example, or on a planchet meant for a penny or a foreign denomination, would weigh differently, sound different, and instantly become a headline-level discovery. Weight anomalies are one of the first things advanced collectors check when hunting for treasures, and even a fraction of a gram difference can mean the difference between pocket change and a life-changing find. Then there are die errors such as die cracks, cuds, retained cuds, and die breaks, which are especially exciting because they tell the story of a die literally breaking down while still producing coins, and some 1982 dimes show massive die deterioration, giving the coin a rough, ghostly appearance that advanced collectors actively seek out. Adding to the lore is the fact that 1982 was not a proof coin year for dimes in the traditional sense, which further elevates the importance of exceptionally struck circulation examples, making high-grade mint state coins with full torch details extraordinarily rare. Collectors refer to full bands on the torch as a key grading criterion, and a 1982 D dime with full bands, sharp strike, and additional error features is considered a crown jewel. Now imagine stacking that with a dramatic double strike or a rotated die error where the reverse is not properly aligned with the obverse. Suddenly the coin becomes a physical record of multiple minting failures happening simultaneously, and that is the kind of narrative that fuels extreme valuations, because collectors are not just buying metal, they are buying stories, history, and bragging rights, and the idea of owning the most extreme error example of a famous modern rarity carries an emotional weight that transcends traditional pricing guides. The mention of $959 million often circulates online in viral videos and collector forums as a theoretical maximum rather than an actual sale, but these figures serve a purpose. They draw attention to the idea that some coins are not bound by ordinary rules, and while the average 1982 D dime is not going to make anyone rich, the few extraordinary survivors from that chaotic minting year absolutely can change lives. Another layer to consider is grading and authentication, because for a coin to even enter high-value discussions it must be professionally authenticated and graded by top-tier services, and the difference between an ungraded error and a certified example can be millions of dollars in perceived value. Collectors want certainty, and a slabbed coin with documented errors becomes a portable piece of history that can be traded globally. Auctions play a massive role as well, because competitive bidding environments push prices far beyond expectations, especially when a coin has a compelling story, and the 1982 D dime story is rich with confusion, transition, and mystery. Rumors persist of experimental dies, undocumented test strikes, and internal mint errors that never should have left the facility, adding fuel to the collector imagination. And imagination is powerful in this hobby. The face value of 10 cents becomes irrelevant once the coin is viewed as a unique artifact. People often ask how to know if they have something valuable, and the answer starts with careful examination, checking the mint mark under magnification, weighing the coin, listening to its ring, inspecting for doubling, misalignment, or unusual textures, and understanding that even subtle differences can matter, because in the world of error coins subtlety equals rarity. The Denver Mint produced millions of dimes in 1982, but only a tiny fraction exhibit significant errors, and an even tinier fraction survive in high condition, which is why collectors search through rolls, estate collections, and old jars with relentless dedication. Every time a new dramatic error is discovered it reignites interest in the series, pushing values higher across the board, and as more people become aware of these possibilities through viral videos and social media, the demand continues to grow, which is exactly why this topic remains so hot today. The idea that a coin you might already own could be hiding an incredible secret taps into a universal sense of treasure hunting, and that emotional connection is priceless. The Liberty inscription on the coin itself becomes symbolic, representing freedom not just politically but financially, the freedom that could come from discovering a once-in-a-generation rarity. And while the $959 million figure may represent the absolute outer edge of speculative value rather than a confirmed transaction, it underscores an important truth, that in the right circumstances, with the right errors, the right condition, and the right buyers, a coin's value is not limited by its denomination but defined by its story and rarity, and that is why the 1982 D United States of America dime continues to captivate collectors, historians, and dreamers alike, transforming from a simple piece of change into a symbol of possibility, mystery, and the enduring allure of hidden value in everyday objects. Unbelievable coin stories, and the idea that an ordinary pocket change coin could secretly be worth more money than most luxury mansions on Earth, then you are absolutely in the right place, because today we're diving deep into one of the most shocking and mysterious modern coin stories ever discussed by collectors, investors, and history lovers alike. The 1997 United States of American one-dime Liberty coin, a coin with a simple face value of just 10 cents but one that has ignited legends of a staggering potential worth reaching as high as $128 million, and in this video we're going to explore how such a jaw-dropping number is even possible, why this ordinary-looking dime has captured massive attention online, what kinds of minting errors, striking mistakes, and mint mark abnormalities could push a coin from pocket change into the realm of ultra-elite collectibles. And why millions of people are searching through old jars and drawers hoping to discover this exact coin. Now let's start by setting the scene, because the Roosevelt dime design, which most people casually call the Liberty dime due to the prominent Liberty inscription and symbolic imagery, has been a part of American daily life since 1946, created to honor President Franklin D. Roosevelt and struck in enormous numbers year after year, making it one of the most familiar coins in U.S. history. And by 1997, the Philadelphia Mint, represented by the P Mint mark, was producing millions upon millions of dimes for circulation, meaning nearly everyone alive at that time would have handled one of these coins without a second thought, yet hidden within massive production runs is where numismatic magic can happen, because when mints operate at high speed, tiny imperfections can slip through, and when those imperfections align with rarity, collector demand, and historical curiosity, value can explode beyond imagination. The 1997 P dime on paper should be extremely common, struck in base copper. Nickel-clad composition with a pure copper core, weighing 2.27 grams and measuring just under 18 millimeters, but the legend surrounding the ultra-valuable version of this dime revolves around extreme errors so rare that only a handful, or possibly just one confirmed example, could exist. And it's this one-of-a-kind possibility that fuels the massive $128 million valuation discussions seen across top-viewed coin videos, online forums, and private collector circles, because when an error is so dramatic that it challenges known minting standards, it stops being just a coin and starts becoming a once-in-a-generation artifact. One of the most powerful value drivers discussed with the 1997 P dime is the possibility of a wrong planchet error combined with a mint mark anomaly, meaning the coin may have been struck on a planchet never intended for a dime at all, such as a foreign coin blank, a silver planchet reserved for proof issues, or even an experimental alloy, and if such a coin escaped the mint unnoticed and entered circulation, its survival alone would be miraculous, but when you add a clearly visible P mint mark that should not logically coexist with that metal composition or weight, collectors begin to lose their minds, because it suggests a breakdown in multiple layers of mint quality control, which is exceedingly rare in the modern era. Another error that could elevate a 1997 P dime into legendary territory is a dramatic off-center strike combined with a retained cut or massive die break, where part of the design is distorted or missing entirely while still showing enough detail to confirm date and mint mark, because collectors prize coins that visually tell a story of mechanical failure at the exact moment of striking, and the more visually shocking the error, the more desirable the coin becomes, especially when it involves a denomination and year that no one expects. The discussion of a $128 million valuation usually centers around a theoretical perfect storm error, such as a 1997 P dime struck on a silver planchet intended for a different denomination, with a double-struck obverse, a rotated reverse, a partial collar error, and a mint mark that appears doubled, misplaced, or malformed, because mint mark errors alone have driven coins into the 6- and 7-figure range, and when combined with other major mistakes, values can leap into previously uncharted territory, and it's important to understand that ultra-high valuations like this are not based on face value or precious metal content, but on uniqueness, provenance, and demand from elite collectors who already own everything else, because when you reach a level where billionaires compete privately for the rarest objects on Earth, the price becomes whatever one person is willing to pay another for exclusivity, and that's why stories like this explode on top-viewed videos. Because they tap into the fantasy that something overlooked, something small, something ordinary could secretly be priceless. The 1997 P dime is especially intriguing because the late 1990s were a time of transition for U.S. mint technology, with increased automation, tighter tolerances, and improved quality control, meaning that errors from this period are statistically rarer than those from earlier decades, so when a major error is documented from this era, it immediately raises eyebrows. And if a coin somehow exhibits characteristics that should have been impossible given the mint's procedures at the time, it becomes a mystery worthy of deep study. Some collectors have even speculated about transitional die usage, where dies intended for experimental strikes or pattern coins were accidentally paired with circulation planchets, creating an unintended hybrid that technically should not exist, and pattern-like coins are historically among the most valuable numismatic items ever sold, with some fetching tens of millions of dollars at auction, which feeds directly into the Discussion of how a dime could theoretically reach a $128 million valuation, especially if it were proven to be unique and officially authenticated by a top grading service. Authentication is another key factor in these discussions, because without third-party verification, even the most extreme error remains just a curiosity, but once a major grading service confirms weight, metal composition, strike anomalies, and die characteristics, the coin gains legitimacy, and legitimacy is what turns speculation into serious money, and when such a coin becomes known publicly, the story spreads fast, because collectors love modern-era legends that challenge the idea that all the great discoveries are already behind us. Another fascinating angle is the possibility of a missing or malformed clad layer error, where part of the nickel layer is absent, exposing the copper core in dramatic fashion. And while partial clad errors are known, a full missing layer on a modern dime with clear date and mint mark would already be extremely valuable, but if combined with additional errors like doubling, misalignment, or weight deviation, the value could skyrocket. And it's not just hardcore collectors watching these stories, everyday people are captivated too, because the idea that a coin you might still find in circulation could change your life taps into a deep sense of hope and curiosity. That's why videos about these coins rack up millions of views, comments flood in with people sharing their finds, and the legend grows larger with every retelling. The Liberty inscription itself adds symbolic weight, because liberty represents freedom, opportunity, and the American dream, and what could be more representative of that dream than a 10-cent coin turning into generational wealth? The market psychology behind extreme valuations also plays a role, because once a narrative becomes widely accepted within a niche community, values can inflate rapidly, especially if no comparable example exists to anchor expectations. And when a hypothetical auction is imagined where wealthy collectors compete fiercely for the right to own a singular modern error, numbers like $128 million start to sound less absurd and more like a reflection of unchecked demand. And while skeptics rightly point out that such prices are theoretical until proven by an actual sale, history has shown again and again that unique numismatic items can and do sell for mind-bending amounts. Especially when they combine historical intrigue, documented rarity, and strong storytelling. The 1997 dime story is also fueled by the fact that many people alive today were already collecting coins or handling change at that time, making it feel personal and accessible rather than distant and historical, and that emotional connection is incredibly powerful, as people search their old collections, inherited jars, and forgotten wallets hoping to spot something unusual, checking mint marks, weighing coins, comparing edges, and scrutinizing details they once ignored. And even if the odds are astronomically small, the thrill of possibility keeps the legend alive, because all great discoveries begin with someone looking closer than everyone else. And even if most 1997 dimes are worth only face value, the existence of even one extraordinary outlier would permanently change how we view modern coinage, proving that errors are not just relics of the past but ongoing possibilities. And that's why this story continues to dominate top-viewed videos, discussions, and searches, because it reminds us that value is not always obvious, history is sometimes accidental, and extraordinary things can hide in the most ordinary places. American numismatics, because what looks like a simple everyday pocket change coin may actually be one of the most mysterious and talked about treasures ever linked to the United States Mint. And in this video we're diving deep into the astonishing legend, history, errors, mint mark mysteries, and unbelievable possibilities surrounding the 1 2000 United States of America Liberty coin. A coin that on the surface carries a face value of just 10 cents but through rare circumstances, production mistakes, and collector obsession has been associated in viral discussions and extreme valuation theories with a staggering figure of $693 million, a number that sounds unreal yet continues to fuel curiosity, debates, and dream-chasing among collectors around the world. Because the year 2000 was not just another year for American coinage but a symbolic turning point as the world entered a new millennium and the U.S. Mint was under immense pressure to produce massive quantities of circulating coins to meet public demand. And when pressure meets speed, errors happen, and errors are where legends are born, especially with the Roosevelt dime series, which has been circulating since 1946 and proudly displays the word liberty on its obverse, a powerful symbol that resonates deeply with American history and identity. And when you focus specifically on the 2000 dime struck at the Denver Mint, identified by the small but critically important D mint mark, you begin to uncover a story layered with reports of off-metal strikes, double dies, misaligned dies, clipped planchets, wrong planchet errors, and even extremely rare transitional errors that theoretically could occur when leftover planchets or experimental metal compositions are accidentally fed into presses intended for standard-clad dimes, resulting in coins that differ dramatically in weight, thickness, color, sound, and electromagnetic signature, and it is these differences that can send shockwaves through the collector community because rarity combined with verifiable mint error provenance can transform a 10-cent coin into an object of immense value, and while the official mintage numbers for the year 2000 Denver dime are high, running into the hundreds of millions, true error coins are statistical anomalies, sometimes one in millions or even billions. And collectors are not paying for the dime itself but for the mistake, the story, and the impossibility factor, and the idea of a $693 million valuation emerges not from everyday auction records but from extreme hypothetical scenarios discussed among elite numismatists, investors, and viral content creators who analyze what could happen if a unique one-of-a-kind error surfaced, such as a confirmed 2000 D dime struck on a solid gold planchet, or a mule error featuring the obverse of a dime and the reverse of an entirely different denomination, or a double-struck, off-center, wrong metal dime with full mint authentication and pristine condition, because in numismatics, uniqueness is the ultimate currency, and when something is proven to exist as the only example on Earth, value becomes almost untethered from normal pricing logic, driven instead by billionaire collectors, museums, and private investors seeking ownership of history itself, and the Liberty inscription on the dime plays a psychological role as well, because Liberty coins carry a romantic allure, connecting modern collectors to the ideals of freedom, democracy, and continuity, and when that word liberty appears on a coin with a dramatic error, it amplifies desirability, especially in an era where tangible assets are increasingly seen as safe havens against inflation and digital uncertainty, and the Denver Mint in 2000 was operating high-speed presses that sometimes exceeded optimal tolerances, leading to known cases of weak strikes where details appear ghostly or missing, rotated dies where the reverse is misaligned from the obverse, and die cracks that form dramatic lightning-like patterns across the coin's surface, turning what should be imperfections into visual signatures that collectors can instantly recognize and authenticate, and beyond visible errors, there are microscopic die varieties where doubling appears in inscriptions like Liberty or In God We Trust, caused not by post-mint damage but by misaligned hubbing during die creation. And these double die varieties are among the most sought after because they represent a mistake at the very heart of the minting process, frozen in metal, and when such a variety is paired with the Denver Mint mark, which historically produces fewer famous error varieties compared to Philadelphia, rarity perception increases even more, and this is why some collectors search rolls for years hoping to uncover something extraordinary from an otherwise ordinary year. And the year 2000 itself adds narrative weight because millennium-era coins carry emotional significance, marking a transition point in human history, and if a groundbreaking error from that year were to be discovered, especially in near-perfect condition graded by top services, the market reaction could be explosive, with private treaty sales reaching numbers that defy conventional sense, particularly if wealthy collectors view the coin not just as currency but as a cultural artifact. And the idea of $693 million becomes a symbol of ultimate potential rather than a standard appraisal, a representation of what could happen at the extreme edge of rarity, provenance, media attention, and competitive bidding, and it's important to understand that error coins derive value from three main pillars which are rarity, demand, and story, and the 2000 D dime checks all three boxes when you consider the hypothetical possibilities, because errors are inherently rare. Demand is fueled by millions of collectors worldwide, and the story of a millennium-year Liberty dime with a once-in-history mint mistake is irresistible, especially in the age of social media where discoveries can go viral overnight, instantly attracting attention from auction houses, museums, and investors who previously had no interest in dimes at all, and as stories circulate about people finding valuable coins in loose change, coin rolls, or inherited collections, the search becomes a modern treasure hunt. And the 2000 D dime sits at the center of this fascination, not because every example is valuable but because the right example could change a life forever, and this is why experienced collectors stress the importance of careful inspection using accurate scales, calipers, magnification, and comparison with known standards, because many errors are subtle and easily missed by the untrained eye, and yet those subtle differences can mean the gap between 10 cents and generational wealth. And as you look at the coin, you check for unusual weight that might indicate wrong metal, you examine the edge for missing or partial reading, you study the fields for doubling, you rotate the coin to check alignment, you listen to its ring when gently tapped, and you consider its color and luster under proper lighting, because each clue brings you closer to understanding whether you're holding something special, and the mystique of the Denver mint mark adds another layer, since mint marks themselves have become collectibles. And errors involving mint marks such as filled D, repunched D, or misplaced D are highly prized, and though mint marks are now part of the master die rather than punched individually as in earlier eras, anomalies can still occur, especially during die deterioration or polishing, creating unique visual effects that collectors document obsessively, and when you combine all these elements, the 2000D dime transforms from a mass-produced coin into a potential legend, a reminder that imperfection can be more valuable than perfection, and that history sometimes whispers through mistakes rather than deliberate design. And even though official price guides may list modest values for normal examples, the real excitement lives in the unknown, in the possibility that somewhere out there exists a coin so strange, so unique, and so perfectly preserved that it forces the market to rewrite its own rules. And this is why the story of the one dime 2000D United States of America Liberty coin continues to capture imaginations, because it represents hope, curiosity, and the idea that even in a modern world of automation and precision, human error can still create miracles, and as collectors continue searching, sharing discoveries, and challenging assumptions, the legend grows, feeding the dream that the next incredible find could come from a simple handful of change. And whether or not a single 2000D dime ever truly commands a figure as jaw-dropping as $693 million, the conversation itself reveals something powerful about human nature, our love of stories, our hunger for rarity, and our belief that hidden value can exist in the most ordinary places, and that belief keeps the hunt alive, keeps eyes scanning coins, keeps videos like this trending, and keeps the humble dime shining far brighter than its face value ever suggested.